theory was that even if there's only 1% chance that
well, that was the basis of going to attack Iraq and who knows what other countries now.
The corollary of going after something if there's a 1% chance that you're right is that there's a 99% chance that you're wrong.
So does anybody else see why they would have all these different groups on this watch list? I mean, at some point, doesn't our government want to protect us? I mean, we keep speaking of George Bush. He keeps saying that he has sworn an oath to protect the American people. I thought it was for the Constitution. That was what I read on the oath. But he says it's to protect the American people.
Just to return to one of Kate's points, it's not the watch list.
Is there something good here?
It seems like it. I mean, the idea of trying to alert local enforcement authorities to an outstanding warrant that someone might have in another state, I agree. I think that there is something good there. But that's the issue, is that they're not limiting themselves to the original purposes for these creations.
The problem is that it's out of control. I don't think it's a question that they're going too far. I think it's a question that in their own psychology, they have succumbed to a certain kind of hysterical fear. In Jack Goldsmith's book, he's the former head of the Office of Legal Counsel who just wrote a scathing book about the Justice Department torture memos and other things. He said that he'd be in meetings urging caution and moderation in the policies, and the response was like something out of 24 and Jack Bauer, where his opponents would say, do you want to be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people? Right. And that's the way they see it in their own minds. They think that another 9/11 could happen just like that.
Going so far as to confront the Attorney General in his hospital bed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you can be agnostic about whether or not another 9/11 might happen, because I mean, we don't know. But what they've done is they put these policies in place, and they've told kind of all the FBI agents and all the border control agents all over the country that their primary job is counterterrorism. And of course, you know, there might be another 19 hijackers in this country, and maybe there are another 100, but there are not 5,000 and there are not 10,000.
And is this an effective way to prevent it?
No, and so what you have is all these people, and who are they going after? They feel that they've done a good day's work when they deny Medea the right to leave the country or facilitate that.
But does is there purpose to suppress groups like PETA or Global Exchange or whatever? Or is the purpose to really, they're putting them up there, it's innocent, and it's just a matter of a system gone crazy?
I think it's a more complicated question, that it's not one or the other.
But they've infiltrated peace groups. I mean, that's
right.
been
The
documented.
FBI,
they have put agent provocateurs in our demonstrations.
That's right.
I mean, we are suing the government and different police departments. We had a Mother's Day demonstration in California, a rainy day. There were about 20 of us soaked people, and we found out in the newspaper a couple of days later that among us was an agent who was sent there. So yes, our groups have been infiltrated, and I consider it totally government attempts to suppress dissent.
In lawyer language, they'd say the question is, who bears the burden? What is the presumption here? Are we presuming that the database includes only legitimate people, or are we presuming malice on the people administering it? And that's a question that can't be answered by an analysis of the system itself. We can't answer that question by looking at the database. That doesn't answer it. What we look at is the other pattern and practice, the prior history of this government, the people who are in power now and they were in government before, and at every opportunity to aggrandize executive power, erode checks and balances that are crucial to the separation of powers that stands at the center of democracy. They have taken those opportunities, and they have sought them. They have engineered them in some instances.
Well, I mean, you have another phenomenon, which is that the local FBI, who's been told you need to make your only priority finding terrorism, they look at Medea's group as linked to, connected to, and so you've given the local FBI the kind of charge that you can expect will be abused and is being abused. And that's because it's not focused on what I'm sure, on any real threat. Not to say that there isn't a real threat, but it's not focused on whatever the real threat is, which is much more narrow.
Then it would detract from possibly the people who are actually there trying to harm Although there are people that say that the ideas and everything
Delusion.
that are espoused through the activists are there to harm the country.
Kate made the point before that, the numbers of people we might be talking about who are here to do harm are, hundreds, thousands perhaps, but certainly wasn't the story came out, I think last week, there are 700,000 people on the terror watch list? I mean,
Although that's a worldwide list.
understood.
Okay, I think there's like 80,000.
But,
here in
there are
America.
tens of thousands of U.S. government employees looking to find terrorists in the United States, and this is what it leads to,
It's the reds under the beds.
Yeah,
approach.
Medea,
And,
is
and
this...
they do conflate, I think, dissent. There has always been that tendency in the United States. There's always been, if you're against the government's policies, you're anti-American. And that strain's always existed here. And as soon as you give the government kind of unchecked power and this national security mission, they go after dissent.
Well,
And
yeah,
that's
during the
always
50s,
been
they could
true.
just say you're a red, and then it was or a communist, and you would go down from there. Not that any type of party affiliation was actually illegal, but they actually made it that way. Is this going to limit you? Is this going to prohibit you, or is it going to inspire you in your activities?
Well, it's certainly not going to stop us. We now have about 20,000 people who've signed up on a petition that we put up very quickly, and immediately people started signing it and are outraged and want to get involved. We're thinking of taking a whole group of people who've been convicted of nonviolent civil disobedience and all marching across the bridge to Canada together. We will certainly be fighting this in all kinds of ways, whether it's through the court system or political pressure, or working through our counterparts in Canada. But I
This list
think
is not going to stop you.
Well, no, this list actually gives us a lot more energy to...
And possibly anybody that has been arrested needs to go out and join you as a way. Is
and
this
to
what you're
try to
looking
put
for?
some checks on this FBI that is out of control. And for me, I think it's sort of a warning that I better start looking as to why so many of us have been put on a criminal database when the criminals are the ones that are running this country, and they're in the White House and they're in Congress.
Okay,
You
and
don't mince words, do you?
we're just about ready to wrap up. We just have about 15 seconds each. If you'd like to quick close, what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are that everybody has to cool off, and that what's going on at the Canadian border is a form of harassment. It is a form of chill. There's no justification for it. And I hope that it will stop.
Kate.
I would second that.
Shahid.
Just that we should assess what's happening in this country as a whole, and we should very aggressively defend our civil liberties. They're very crucial to what this country has stood for historically. It's very crucial to the world that we stand for those principles in the international community, and as individual Americans, it's incumbent upon us, and it's our responsibility as citizens to vigorously defend our rights.
Well, I want to thank you all for being on this show tonight and discussing this very important issue about civil liberties, about what the FBI and the Canadian government is doing. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here tonight, and hope that you've taken away a little bit, and we will be seeing you very soon.